Composer Lori Zellman writes this: "The lands in longing call out your name. The tongues are different, the prayer the same. With humble, willing spirits, can we believe that God is bigger than we conceive? The day is coming, the Lord will move with the hand of justice and the heart of love. The will of heaven on this earth be done. The day is coming, oh, let it come." Now, last week, while I was doing some research for today, I discovered a National Geographic movie that was filmed in IMAX 3D entitled Jerusalem 3D. And as I was watching it, in no time, it brought tears to my eyes. And here's why. First of all, it had a spectacular aerial view of the Holy City, including such sites as the Western Wall, the Al-Aqsa Mosque, and the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. And if you remember, even Jesus wept over this city as he descended the Mount of Olives into the Kidron Valley with its stunning view of the city. And secondly, for most religious people, Jerusalem is a city like no other, home to three faiths: Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. And to this day, a religious procession like Jesus' Palm Sunday procession would not be out of place. For one or even several of these take place in Jerusalem every single day. In the film, for example, one of the best shots is a procession of monks heading over the crest of one of the hills that's leading into Jerusalem. And best of all, the movie tells the story of Jerusalem through the eyes of three teenage girls and their families. And there lies the most heartbreak. A Jewish girl, Revital Zachary, a Muslim girl, Farah Amori, and a Greek Orthodox and Roman Catholic girl, Nadia Tadros. Each girl tells of their heritage and their dreams, not only for the Holy City, but for a peaceful coexistence, which, given the situation there today, still seems so far away. And yet, even in times when inflammatory rhetoric and fear deepens, rather than bridges the divides between races and religions, we can still dream ancient dreams of peace and mutual understanding. As I said, for all who have been to Jerusalem and experienced the religious circus that it is, Jesus' triumphal procession into Jerusalem on Palm Sunday fits right in. And yet, while the sights and the sounds of the story give us plenty to work with, there is even more that can't be seen. I mean, wasn't the air heavy with the hopes and dreams of the ancient scriptures? Of the triumphal entry of God's Messiah into Jerusalem? Were those the thoughts that filled the heads and hearts of those people that lined the way of Jesus' disciples? Even of Jesus himself? Was this the day God would begin to turn things around and end the brutal occupation of the Romans and herald in the Davidic kingdom, on whose throne the son of David would sit? Didn't they all feel like they were on edge of the fulfillment of the ancient dream of the Messianic kingdom described in Isaiah? During Holy Week, we see how it all turns out. How all the idealistic visions of peace seem to turn out, nailed to a cross. Even though we know that it is not the end of the story, even now it's not the end of the story. More than 2,000 years later, God is still working God's purposes out, not only to redeem us personally, but to redeem all humanity, including breaking down the barriers that divide all God's children. When Jesus entered Jerusalem that day, there were no Muslims, because Islam didn't begin until the 6th century. And I would remind you that there were also no Christians, because Jesus was not a Christian, but a Jew, from birth to death. If Jesus were to visit Jerusalem today, he would be amazed, not only at how Jerusalem has changed, but how the world has changed. Now the big blue marble on which we sail through space, planet Earth, is home to 7.5 billion people roughly, and 84% of them belong to 5 major religions: Christianity, Islam, Hinduism, Buddhism, and often various folk religions. There are 13 million Jews. And almost all of us, yes, even here in Morris, know and work with people of other faiths. And our children go to school with them. And some of them are our best friends. And we come to know them, and we abandon our stereotypes and our suspicions, and we learn that they want the same things that we want for our children and for our grandchildren to grow up and live in safety and peace and prosperity as far as possible. And when people utter the prayer, please, or have mercy, or thank you, as Diane said, these transcend our particularities and connect us together in a larger community. And when we recognize our common humanity, when we begin to see our Jewish and Muslim and Hindu and Buddhist neighbors not as a threat to our way of life, but as people struggling with the same issues as everyone else. And so the dreams of these ancient prophets of a time when all people shall live in joy and gladness and sorrow and sighing shall flee away and still hang heavily in the air. And you know what? I would be willing to live and give my life for those dreams. Wouldn't you? You know, as director of outreach a few years ago, I had the opportunity to sit with a rabbi, a Jewish scholar, an imam, an Islamic worship leader, a UCC pastor, and myself. And as I say this, it sounds like the beginning of a joke, but it's not. The rabbi had just returned from the gathering of rabbis in Jerusalem, during which time they visited the Benedictine Abbey of the Dormition in show of support, and given that it was recently vandalized by extremist Israeli youths. And together we discussed Jerusalem and the situation there between the Israelis and the Palestinians, between Jews and Muslims, and what few Christians there are left. And we all mourned the lack of leaders that were willing to step forward and lead a way towards peace, which unfortunately, as we know, is not confined to Israel right now. You know, and I remember that even as a young man, Jesus was willing to step forward on that Palm Sunday to put his life on the cross. Through the breaking of his own body, not only would he destroy death, but also break down the barriers that divide us, and all of us privileged to live together in this big blue marble that's sailing across space. And when I see this cross, I remember what God has done for me. That no price is too great for me to be free. Jesus is my God. And Father, into your hands I commit my spirit. Would you bow your heads in prayer with me? And while your heads are bowed and your eyes are closed, I would just like to invite you to simply say, Jesus, I accept the gift that you give. I accept the suffering you did for me. Forgive me and heal me and make me yours. And then finally, I'd like to invite you to pray with me the prayer that Jesus taught his disciples to pray on the cross that day. So if you would just repeat after me. Father, into your hands.
Father, into your hands.
I commit my spirit.
I commit my hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread,
And forgive us our trespasses,
as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power,